suspend the rules and all that. Okay, so I'm Sheree Fisher. I will be chairing this meeting. We need a motion to suspend the rules so that we can hold the meeting virtually.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jerry. All in favor, say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand. Aye. All opposed? All righty. And the rules are suspended. Onward now to public comment. There's several members of the public here. Let's see. Katerina, do you want to make a statement? No, you're just listening in. Okay, welcome. Elizabeth Kinney, would you like to say anything?
No, I'm just here to observe. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Glad you're here. Marty, I know you're waiting for a particular agenda item, but do you want to make a comment during public comment?
No, as long as I can say what I have to say at the right time in the agenda. About the sediment dredging project.
Okay, I think that's okay. Leslie Shad, is there anything you want to say?
Nope, I'm just here to listen. Thank you.
All right, welcome. iPad 5, I think, is usually Tom Klitsky. And all right, seeing no additional members of the public, we will move on to announcements. So as many of you know, Kara Pratt has now officially joined the city staff as the new sustainability coordinator, replacing Kumar. Some of us have had the opportunity to meet her virtually, and she's pretty wonderful. So Kara, do you want to say anything by way of introduction? I just want to say welcome.
Good to see everyone's faces. Thank you for having me, Environment Board. My name is Kara Pratt. I'm the new Sustainability and Resilience Coordinator for the city, and I'm joining you all from the city of Racine, Wisconsin, where I previously held a near identical role in conjunction with managing the lead service line replacement program. So I hope that that makes me a mild expert on environmental justice matters. I have really enjoyed meeting many of you, and I look forward to meeting all of you at some point in person, and relocating closer to Evanston as well is a major goal of mine. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to working together.
Great. Thank you, Kara. We're all delighted to meet you.
Thank you.
I already think you are.
Sorry, I just wanted to say welcome, Kara. That's great. Congratulations, and we're excited to have you.
Same here.
Kara is bringing a lot of energy and great ideas. So I look forward to hearing from her.
Good.
Okay, we need to approve some meeting minutes. First, we'll start with the minutes from the July 8th meeting. I had some really minor comments. Let's see. Under staff reports, number 5A, the word lower in the second to last sentence can come out. I don't know if that's a typo, but that's a weird word to have there. Under paragraph K, it says next month City Council would be able to either immediately apply it or apply it for next year. Not sure what that's supposed to mean. Does anyone remember? Maybe we just strike that sentence, which I don't think is needed. And number 8, under adjournment, Fisher moved to adjourn, all moved. Instead of moved, I would say agreed. As I recall,
got out of our chairs and moved.
Yep, that's not what I remember happening. Okay, those are my updates for those minutes. Anything else from anyone else? You can take a minute to look through them if you haven't had a chance.
I'd move to accept the meeting notes.
Okay.
Second,
That's as amended.
as
Yes,
amended.
Does anyone need more time or have anything to add? Okay, then we have a motion to accept the minutes as amended. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Alrighty, onward then. We have another set of minutes from the September meeting. I don't have any corrections to these or edits. Does anyone?
I thought they were good.
Does anybody need time to look through them? All right, if not, we have a oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Jerry.
There's a small word missing under universal waste policies, under items for discussion number A. He is working with Mr. Johnson, the maintenance supervisor. Yeah, just add the word with, I think, makes
Okay.
the sentence make sense. Thank you, that's it.
All right, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as edited?
So moved.
Thanks, Chris. Can I have a second?
Second.
Many seconds. Okay, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand,
Aye.
please.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? All right, done with that business. Let's see, onward now to staff reports. First up is the solid waste update by Brian Zimmerman. You have the floor, Brian.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to give a quick update on some of the stuff I've been working on. As we know, I'm 2 months now into the role. Still feeling my way through the complex environment that is the city of Evanston, understanding everything we're offering, all the nuances that come with it. But I wanted to provide an update on what I have learned and what I'm working on still. First up is the zero waste subcommittee piece. Our working group for zero waste is kind of been on shaky legs because Michelle and some others have had some other obligations that have come up that obviously take precedent. And with that, we've been trying to figure out the best iteration moving forward of that group. So I have been reaching out to a few of you that are on this call, as well as some other community members about how best to organize ourselves. And I'm anticipating here probably within the next month to hopefully have a initial meeting, trying to flesh out more of the scope of that group, be more pointed, especially with a new permanent role in the position, to kind of have a better sounding board on things that we're working on, but also kind of use it as an opportunity to get even more names and bodies that we can try to get into this group, to get more different types of stakeholders, you know, like maybe the Chamber of Commerce, try to get them involved. Rebuilding Warehouse is a group that we've engaged with. We've also engaged with Collective Resource, different stakeholders who have different parts of the framework of waste here in Evanston, and try to get their perspectives in on this group at least, and maybe their involvement in the group, to give us a more comprehensive viewpoint on how to best tackle zero waste moving forward. So that is that group, and we're just kind of slowly moving along with that, and I'm hoping to have more movement on it in the next month. The other thing is the commercial RFP. For those who do not know, is the commercial franchise agreement is set to expire almost within a year. So with that, we are starting the development, or actually picking up the work that Kumar had done at the end of 2019 and resuming that work. There are a few changes we're anticipating making to his last draft that I had access to. Per my own suggestions, and as time has progressed, things have obviously changed. So we are working to update that, and that'll be something we'll present either to the board for review, for comment eventually. We're hoping to get it out by January. That'll give us enough time to get through all the process, get it approved by City Council, and have enough leeway before the actual current agreement would expire. So I would anticipate hopefully seeing something here within the next couple months. Just to give it a little bit of insight on things that we're changing, just to, because you don't have anything in front of you, and also as a reminder of things that happened or were discussed 2 years ago, we were looking at improving the waste characterization data to get us a better understanding of what the commercial waste stream actually looks like, not only from the solid waste and trash side, but also the recycling angle. Those are two big black holes of information that the city has not had ever, and we're looking to get better information to allow us to be able to strategize better moving forward. The other things is we're looking for better data. We're looking at for specific diversion metrics. We're looking for better accounting and service information in the next RFP process that'll allow us to be better engaged with the customers and hold the actual waste hauler to their service agreement, which will hopefully allow for businesses to have better service, which we think is important. There are a few other things that are in there that I would anticipate. I don't think people remember, but there was a recycling coordinator position that was written into that old RFP. We obviously have changed that because I am now present. So that's another anticipated change. And there will be a few others that you'll get to review and comment in the next couple months. So that's that piece. Another thing I've been working on is the commercial administration fee, the commercial franchise administration fee change. For those who do not remember, it was about a year ago that the City Council had passed the recommendation from Kumar to change the administrative fee for trash service for commercial franchise or for commercial businesses. What that ended up doing was changing the rate to allow for lower generators to have a bit of a break on that administrative fee, and it kind of kicked some of that cost or that displaced cost to higher generators, and as a way to kind of incentivize them to recycle and compost moving forward. Well, due to some communication errors, that actually didn't go into effect until this month. So we have been working to notify businesses. I have actually been going and trying to meet with some of the ones that are expected to have the highest difference in their bills. One is just as an education piece saying this is something to expect to see this month, but also one, I am letting them know that I'm a technical resource for them, that I am here available in the city now. I can help them analyze their waste streams, kind of find opportunities to recycle. And the response so far has been a mixed bag. As you can imagine, there's been people that have not been necessarily thrilled about the idea of paying for more services. There are some that are excited that we have some spaces, and there's some that have off-headed comments just on service. So we've gotten kind of a mixed bag in that group. It's a slow go trying to track down and get in front of these businesses. Some, as we maybe didn't anticipate and didn't really have a good grasp on. Actually, there's quite a few account managers of these that are not located in Evanston. So they might be businesses that are owned and managed by companies that are outside of Evanston or are all the way out in New York or Utah, and getting in front of those groups is actually a pretty big challenge. So we'll try to navigate that space best we can, but we are having some success. We are getting a few businesses to ask the right questions on how do I reduce my bill? How do I recycle better? What do you see? And I'm trying to be more engaged in that space within the last month and continue to do that moving forward. The other thing is, per director, or actually interim acting city manager, deputy manager, I think his title is now, Dave Stonebeck, he had asked me in one of our last bureau meetings this week to get with Kara, and we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow to kind of discuss zero waste metrics. We are trying to sit down and kind of think through the process of what information do we need to capture to best showcase improvements, benchmarks, progress, all of that in terms of our transition to being a zero waste community. So her and I kind of have a note, an agenda that we have set up, and kind of going to have a discussion on that. And that'll be a space that we will use as a way of navigating what information and how best do we need to capture this stuff moving forward, especially as we strategize on how best to implement programs and stuff. So that's another thing we were working on. More of a highlight, I put a pin in the universal recycling and composting ordinance at the moment, just because we have a lot on the plate that could change things. So one is oh, Jerry, did you have a question on that? I'm sorry, just saw your hand.
Not on that. I just wanted to make sure that when you met with Kara, you had the information that Chris Kucharzik and the Zero Waste Work Group had prepared on metrics.
Are you talking about that presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that.
Great. Okay. If you have any questions, just let us know. But
Okay.
Thanks.
The universal recycling and composting ordinance. I have put a temporary pin in that piece. I know that was something that was being worked on, and the reason why I have is I've been engaging the health department to get information on food establishments within the city. I think I wanted to get a better grasp on all the players that could be potentially impacted, especially from a composting arm. I also put a pin in that from a movement standpoint is that we have the commercial RFP currently being developed. And one of the things I learned when engaging some of the haulers is that they're much more open to providing these services after an agreement's actually been executed. So they don't necessarily like tipping their hand when it comes to proposing these types of services from a competitive standpoint. There's a lot of active competition here in the Chicagoland area in the northern suburbs. So one of those pieces is we're trying to navigate that as keep interest high in that RFP process and not having them tip too far where they would feel too much to shy away from things like organics collection and that piece, and get a little farther in that process of understanding. So, and the other thing that would help is immensely in that piece is the waste characterization data. Having that completed and brought back to us will allow us to really understand what is capable with an ordinance like that. So that's stuff I'm trying to navigate right now and don't have a firm grasp to feel like moving forward with that piece is something I've been comfortable to work on. So that's been primarily what I've been working on. There's been a lot of organizational pieces within our own group on keeping information concise and better organized that I've been working on, but those are the main topics. So I don't know if people have questions or comments.
I just have a question about I totally understand why there are kind of predecessors to moving forward with the universal recycling and composting rule. What I'm sort of wondering though is if at least we kind of have a roadmap or a milestone. It's I think just going to take a long time to implement it as well. So the longer we kind of put it off, it's just going to keep kind of delaying. And we've got some Carp goals that are looming.
Yeah, those are great comments. I think this stems from a bigger need, to be honest. Learning my role is that we do not have a great roadmap when it comes to zero waste just in general. We do not have a good grasp on the different tools that are that we should be implementing with. I don't think we also have a great idea, which we are working towards, but a great idea of the landscape of waste within Evanston from a residential side to a commercial side. We have never had a really great baseline when it comes to that information, which I think would be helpful in terms of framing which program or an ordinance or an incentive is likely to achieve and maybe the anticipated benefits or consequences that come with it, as well as the anticipated costs. So if there's a program that we have to implement, that those costs would be better to be leveraged if we had a bit more of a roadmap. So that is something I'm say it with a deep sigh because it's a big ask and a big lift to try to build a strategy like that without, as you mentioned, Michelle, continuously moving forward, because these pieces do take time, do take preparation to do, and the idea is not to just stand still while we try to analyze this for years or whatever it takes, or a year, without moving forward something. I totally understand.
What is your estimated timescale for getting up to speed on that?
A lot of it has to do with funding, unfortunately. To implement a really good, thorough plan would usually require a consulting group. A consultant that I've looked at other strategies, zero waste strategy plans from cities like Boulder, Colorado, Seattle, Austin, Texas, Palo Alto, Pasadena. All of them had consultants or had taken a year or two to develop a full-blown strategy plan to come up with a menu of priorities that would be best for them to take action on. But I know we don't have that.
And what you're saying is mirroring exactly what the zero waste work group identified, right? And maybe you know that through the discussions we've had. I would just like to say, absolutely everything you're saying is needed, and to do it right, we need the clear plan and the roadmap and the strategy. That being said, recognizing we need all that, let's try to consider, can we make some progress on some little pilots, look for volunteer organizations, whether it's, maybe Whole Foods would volunteer or something like that. Let's, if possible, let's try to make a little bit, see if we can make a little bit of headway with some little pilots in the absence of, having a roadmap, which could take a long time and a lot of resources to develop. Just a thought.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
We just saw the budget come out. Maybe I don't know if you were involved in putting it together or not, and I have not been looking for this. I just wonder if there, since we want to be advocates for you, for the staff, as much as we can, if there's something in there or there's something that's missing. You mentioned the need for a consultant to develop a roadmap, and I know we've been talking about that broadly, as a Carp implementation as a whole, a roadmap. But maybe I don't want to put you on the spot right now, but if something like that does come to mind, I hope you'll let us know. And can I ask one other question? Did you say Dave Stoneback has a different job now? Yes.
Yeah, he if it hadn't been shared yet, I apologize. He got asked by the acting city manager to be the deputy city manager. So he's kind of wearing partially two hats at the moment. As they are looking for someone, he has kind of filled that space due to not having another candidate. So he's bridging both groups, and then Edgar, the bureau chief for public works, is kind of taking on more responsibilities for the entire agency, kind of filling in for where Dave can't necessarily devote the time anymore from his now added responsibilities.
Thanks.
That's news to me.
Yeah.
Any other questions or
I
comments?
apologize for being the bearer of the news. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can I just say too, I'm really grateful that you took time out of your evening to come to this meeting and brief us. And I hope that we can find ways to, support you. And so
I have felt nothing but support from the people that I've engaged with this group. So I think everyone knows what we want to do. It's more of some of this stuff is building the foundation to get other people on board is the way I kind of view this stuff. These are tools. These are opportunities to showcase the need, showcase the opportunity, and showcase the level of work it's going to take to get there. Those are kind of the three pillars of how I view some of this planning process to go. But I'll leave it at that. I have other thoughts personally, but I'll leave it at that.
All right. I want to note that Luke Stowe is with us, and I'm sorry I didn't note that before. And Luke, is there anything you want to check in with us about?
Jerry, he just actually is, he's the host of the meeting. I'm the co-host.
Oh, okay.
That's the only thing he's doing for us.
Okay, I got you.
It's the way they
Thanks.
have their account set up in Zoom.
Okay, no problem. Okay, onward then to zero emissions municipal strategy update from Kara.
So far I've just been mostly learning about what's going on, but something that I wanted to speak about this evening, because I think it is somewhat time sensitive, is the municipal zero emissions strategy report. And it's my understanding that but in a draft version. And at this point, that report is now finalized. And so I wanted to respectfully ask the board how you would like to proceed, because my understanding is internally, the process that should take for going to common council, going to city council, is to go through the HSC, is that the Human Services Committee? I think that's what it's called. And so the timeline for that is, if this board would consider receiving a formal presentation from me at the next meeting, I think on November 11th, about the municipal zero emissions strategy, and then discussing it and perhaps providing some guidance, then we could move it through our own internal bureaucratic process. So that
I would
the city
support
council
that.
could make it public.
Kara, one of the fun or not so fun parts of coming in the middle of so many different processes at the same time, when the Environment Board took a look at the draft zero emissions strategy, we had comments, we had a good discussion, and then heard from Dave Stoneback that the comments that we had made, he did not believe they had been taken into consideration in the next phase. And so we haven't seen anything since we made those comments. And I for one, would be interested in whether or not anything we said, stuck or made an impact.
Okay, I can look into that, look into the previous minutes, and then compare them with this final version of the report, and then compile that into a presentation to this board for our next meeting, if that makes sense.
That would be great. And if you need any help with that, I don't know if I think Carolyn, did you attend the last Utilities Commission meeting? No? Okay. I would be happy to help you, Kara, if you have any questions about the comments or anything like that. Thanks.
In general, Kara, I would say that this board loves to have city staff come to our meetings and tell us what they're up to. You're always welcome to do that. And I'm wondering too, is there a version of the report that we can review before your presentation, or should we wait until after?
Yes, based on your feedback tonight, I was going to send it right after this meeting.
Perfect. Great. That's great.
Or
So
maybe
we'll put,
send it the Monday before the meeting so it doesn't get lost in our minds.
or
That's
both.
something that happened a month ago.
Both. How about
Yeah.
both?
All right. Any other comments or questions for Kara on the zero emissions municipal strategy? All right, then we will look forward to hearing from Kara in November. Thank you again. Next up on the agenda is the Carp Implementation Task Force. Jerry.
So just really briefly, and I'm glad Brian brought up the issue about zero waste, because we really didn't talk about that much, but we had a meeting yesterday and we pivoted our attention toward identifying eligible projects that could be funded under ARPA. But I personally haven't looked at the budget yet, so that's actually a task that we all are planning to do, is do a crosswalk between the budget proposals, which we think have some good references to CARP implementation, and you'll hear about that. I think, is that on the agenda, or are we talking about that now? One of the outcomes of yesterday's meeting was that we wanted to present to the Environment Board for endorsement a letter to the mayor and others on the importance of a CARP implementation strategy. Similar to the roadmap that Brian is talking about, the overall roadmap for CARP is missing. And so it's very hard to set priorities and establish milestones. We don't know how we're going to meet the goals. We're just doing some stuff, and it hasn't been really effective. Second to that, we are piecing together some individual project write-ups in a very short kind of format, just the title and the justification for the project and the citation within the Treasury Department's interim final rule for ARPA. How we think these projects will fit, and I'd really suggest maybe if it's possible to think about the zero waste area in those terms. A lot of the ARPA language, as we've learned, it is very focused on equitable response to the COVID virus. So some of the framework or the foundation of that is kind of building up, disadvantaged neighborhoods that suffered even more than the rest of the population in Evanston as a result of the pandemic, and that social, economic, environmental features, building those up can be eligible under the guidance that we've read so far. So that's something that we're planning to do. I think, Kara, you and I were going to try to follow up with someone, and I haven't had a chance to call my staff contact yet, but to find out what the process is for considering these project proposals and the timing. So I hope to do that shortly, but we'd heard, I think we mentioned this yesterday, that it will come up as part of the overall budget discussion at City Council on Monday. Have you learned anything else between now and last night?
I have not.
No. Okay.
Jerry, could I interrupt you for a minute?
Absolutely.
I just want to clarify for those in the meeting who were not part of the CIT discussion. Jerry's talking about two separate things. One is the federal funding that came to the city through ARPA, which is already in the city's hands, and now they just have to decide how they're going to spend it. But there are very strict guidelines about what they can spend it on, and the CIT task force group is looking to crosswalk between priority projects and things that can be funded under ARPA. So that's like the money from the sky funding. And then the other piece is the city's regular proposed budget for 2022, which came out this week as well. It's hundreds of pages long. Nobody has really digested it yet, but the CIT did parse through it a little bit to see what funding was in there for CARP implementation. So those are two separate things. Okay, back to you, Jerry.
Thanks for that clarification.
Could I ask a quick technical question? Is it possible to enable the chat? That's a question for Leslie. Or
I believe it is. Try it.
I did try it, and
it says
chat disabled, because I was going to put the link to the budget in it. Anyway, sorry to distract.
Okay.
If you can change it, I'll check again. Thanks.
Try it now.
It still says disabled. Well, technical. How do you find it it's on the city's website, right? Just
yes. Yeah, I can't make this the chat because it's recording.
Okay, maybe it's the order, because this happened last month too. Okay, sorry.
Here, try it now.
Ah, yes, there it goes. Okay,
It was buried somewhere, but I found it.
thank you, thank you. Okay, that's the link to the city budget proposal that just came out.
So would this be a good time to go over the letter that Cherie developed so we could get board approval to send this forward? Because if there is a discussion on Monday night, it would be good to have this in the proper hands.
So again, so the draft memo went out to everyone from Wendy, I think, this afternoon. And the context for that is there are some line items in the regular budget that give money for Carp implementation. And one of them seems to call out funding for developing a Carp implementation strategy with a consultant. And then the others are just line items for implementing Carp projects, Carp related projects over the next few years. So this is a sort of, I don't know how to characterize it, but this is just a memo to City Council saying, thank you for putting that stuff in there, City Manager, and we hope that City Council will support those line items as the budget is discussed and, changed and then voted on.
So is it the objective that somebody actually goes to the meeting and reads the letter, or what's the purpose? Are we just going to send it, or both?
That's what I asked.
So my understanding is, as an advisory memo of the Environment Board, and we've done this before, we submit it, to the parties directly, and we can also send it to formally to City Council by sending it to the city clerk, and then it's not read into the record, but it does become part of the record. That's at least my understanding. Does anyone know anything different?
Kumar was our protocol leader.
I know.
Yeah.
I have seen Rebecca Mendoza, the clerk, summarize letters, I believe, that or public comment received in writing. And so maybe that's what we're trying to do is to have it acknowledged that way.
Right.
I like the idea of it being a verbal discussion during the meeting, just because, if it's just a letter somewhere, the members, the council members could potentially just not really notice it as much, versus if it's summarized, as you said, by the clerk, or somebody from the Environment Board goes and says, I'd like to put this in the record.
Yeah, I'm not here. I don't think Cherie is here on Monday. But would anybody, well, first of all, let's decide if this is the letter that we want to send. Okay. Does everyone have a copy? Does anyone not have a copy? Or should we put it on the screen?
Can we put it on the screen? I have not had a chance to look at it. And maybe everybody else has. If so, don't do it just for Michelle.
No, it's fine, because we've also got guests. They can take a look at it as well. Can anyone share their screen with it? I don't think I have it easily accessible.
I'll look for it.
It's the final.
It is posted on the Environment Board page on the city website now as part of the meeting materials. So thank you, Leslie, for doing that.
And did you also email it out, Wendy? Is that what I heard?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
Yay!
Our technical guru.
Our tech guru, yeah. Okay. So, Cherie did such a fantastic job of authoring this. Cherie, do you want to go through it? Do you want to read it?
I mean, it's written as a letter to be sent, but if it might need to be changed a bit if it's going to be someone else is going to go there and read it or something like that.
I think even if someone goes in person, we want to send it tomorrow so that it becomes part of the record, and so the city clerk is aware of it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it would be easy enough if you were there in person, just to say, we're here to urge you to support funding to develop the CARP implementation strategy. Raise your hand if you want more time. Does anyone have any suggestions or comments?
I say send it.
I would say this is a little outside our usual role of telling them to do something they're not going to do or they're not thinking about doing. They seem to be thinking about doing it, and we just want to cheer them on.
Yeah, my only question was that, you know, the language in the budget appeared to be a little bit open-ended, and this does the job of, you know, kind of pinpointing precisely what we want that
Right.
to do. And so I think it's important. It's written in a very positive way, as opposed to, you know, please change the wording. And I really like the letter.
I like it too. Just so I'm clear, the last sentence, we're commending them for allocating money for the CARP implementation strategy roadmap and also $100,000 per year. Is that $100,000 per year something that's already in there, or is that something we're asking for?
My understanding was it's already in there.
Okay.
And the CARP implementation roadmap strategy, the wording is not far off that, and that's a separate $80,000.
I'll just say, to be clear, you know, what the city council talked about when they've talked about CARP is, you know, having this overarching sense of what has to be done. Every single project, as we've learned through the examination of ARPA eligibility, every street, you know, green streets or complete streets project, every new infrastructure project, basically everything that the, you know, public works, public health, and other departments do will have a CARP, you know, it will address CARP in one way or another, you know, but having that dedicated funding, it just makes, it just pulls it together and allows the city to, you know, catch up to where other municipalities are.
So are we ready for a motion on accepting the letter and agreeing to send it to city council? Are we there? All right, could I have a motion to that effect, please?
I move that we accept this letter as written to the mayor, city council, and city manager.
Can I have a second, please? Thank you. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Okay, done with
Quick
that piece.
comment.
Yeah.
Cherie, if you're going to send it, are you going to send it? Or
Yeah, I'll send it.
Don't forget to take the word draft off the top.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
I added that at the last minute. Yeah.
I'll also double check the line item for the 100K per year. I didn't go back to the budget before I sat down to write. Okay, so done.
So we're going to send it. Is somebody also going to go to the meeting and read it, or can we do that? Can we get on the agenda?
So my understanding is that this Monday's meeting is going to be different because it's the budget discussion. I'm not sure they're going to have public comment. It's just too big a budget, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that anyone is available to go.
So Cherie, there is a process when you, and this may be different, as you said, for this particular meeting, but if you sign up for, if you go to the website that has the agenda for city council and you sign up for public comment, it says, send, if you want to send, letters to city council, send them to Stephanie Mendoza. I don't have it in front of me, but it should be fairly easy to figure out how to do that. And if there's any indication that there's public comment, is anyone available who would like to read this?
I could do it if it's appropriate for the meeting.
What day is this? Is this Monday, as in the next Monday we hit?
Yeah.
I could potentially be available.
It'd be nice if it's more than one of us.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we need to do that for this purpose, partly because, as I think Shri pointed out, this is we're just encouraging them, and I think they get weary of a lot of public comment, frankly, I would. But anyway, that's my own feeling, that I feel as if maybe in this case it's enough, if they don't take it seriously, or we have a much bigger issue, we might save ourselves for that. Anyway, that's my thought. Yeah.
We could go there and smile a lot.
Yeah.
We could listen and we can listen in, they on to the
Right.
council.
I hear you, Wendy. I think that the few meetings I've been to for city council, most of the public comment has been, a little bit more argumentative, if you will, or critical. And maybe it would be nice for the city council to say, here, hey, we're here to cheer you on. We think you're doing a good thing here.
Okay, good point. Good point. I take your point.
Right? Do they always only have to hear when they're doing something controversial?
By the way, I'm sorry. Since we last met, we also sent them another memo from the Carp implementation task force a couple weeks ago about ARPA, and that was more impassioned. I'm saying you got to do something like right now. So anyway, that's more context.
I just pulled up the agenda for the city council meeting. It's termed a special city council meeting, but they are taking public comment. Oh, sorry, but it does still look like they're taking public comment. Did you want to say something, Tom?
No.
Okay. All right. Jerry, is there anything else you wanted to discuss?
Not for now. Of course, we've pivoted. Well, Chris, I want you to know, even though you weren't able to be there last night, we will pivot back to the roadmap. The roadmap is of continued interest. And we've got a couple of city council members at least who are continue to be very interested in that. So stay tuned. Hopefully in the very near future that'll be on our agenda. Just to close out this discussion though, I'm not clear. I know that we are going to submit this to Stephanie Mendoza as city clerk and send it individually to the addressees. But if Mark and Michelle are available to read this out at city council, is this something we want the community to hear in person? I mean, I think it would be fine. If you think it's overkill.
I don't think reading it verbatim is needed. I think a summary that just says, we note that there's these line items in the budget. We think that's great. Carry on. Something like that.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. Onward then. Next item for discussion is the leaf blower update. Wendy.
Okay. Just a quick update. So as we all know, the council has a leaf blower committee, and that Eleanor Revelle, Ward 7 council member, has been leading that, and Jonathan Newsmuth from our Ward 4 is also on it, and occasionally Melissa Wynn of Ward 3. over the last several weeks, they've been meeting, and I've sat in on these meetings, and have really gone into this in detail, preparing to go back to council with an ordinance recommendation about this, leaf blower situation that has been kind of on the table for a long time. And by the way, some of you may have seen that California just adopted one of the most comprehensive bans on gas leaf blowers in the country. So what I wanted to report that I think you'd be interested in is they've brought in staff people who were involved in one way or another with leaf blowers and ordinance enforcement, because we had pointed out some time ago that the enforcement was something that really needed to be looked at. Also with the registration issue, which I think Tom originally brought up here. So that has included Edgar Cano coming, and Greg Olson from Public Health, who is responsible for things like restaurant inspections, and has at this point, at least theoretically, some the responsibility for issuing citations along with the police. Mike Rivera, who's the head of the parking enforcement group, and also Stephen Walker, who's the head of the Greenways division, who uses a lot of this gasoline powered equipment. So, and then on top of that, the last time they met, they had two representatives from the American Green Zone Alliance, which you may remember presented a workshop a couple of years ago, co-hosted by Wilmette, but co-hosted by Evanston too. But they work with this group called Quiet Communities to try to support and advocate for and train people, prepare people for transition to electrification of landscape maintenance equipment. So they're very well informed at this point. And I certainly have gotten a better understanding of what some of the challenges are for the enforcement people, for example. And so I think that in the next few days, there probably will be a draft the legal department is working on, and they hope to stick to the timeline they set out and go back to council, I think within the next month with the proposal. That's it.
Great. Any questions or comments for Wendy?
Way to go.
Michelle had her hand up.
No, it was a clapping. It was
Yeah,
okay.
I saw the clapping.
way to go.
I just want to say seems on the one hand like a drop in the bucket when we talk about cutting emissions. On the other hand, it does turn out to be complicated for a number of reasons that that sort of take you into the minutia of how city government works, right? How do the parking enforcement people work? How many of them are there? What times of day do they work? Does somebody work on Sunday? What about the health inspectors? They don't drive around the city all day. So by the time they get out to issue a citation, they don't see anybody. So, all of that has to be kind of thought through. And Council Member Revelle, as some of us know, is extremely patient in working through details of this kind. So we'll see if we get this wrapped up. I hope so this fall.
Wonderful. Now on to use of dredged material on Evanston beaches. Jerry and Marty.
I want to
Jerry
give
first, I would think.
a real brief introduction, just to remind everyone that we did send a letter from the Environment Board to the U.S. Corps of Engineers on this topic. And this is really just an update since we haven't, gosh, I don't even have the date of that letter. Marty, do you have the date of that original letter? But in that letter, we did ask for, additional monitoring. We want to know what's in this stuff before they put it in on the beaches that our families, play in. And this board, approved that letter and agreed with that idea. So I just want to kind of mention that as background to this letter that you have in front of you tonight for approval. It's not a departure from that message. It's just more specific with respect to human health criteria. And we've learned a little bit more about how they plan to make that decision. Thanks, Chris. All right.
Yay.
So Marty, do you want to take us through the letter a little bit?
Sure. And this date that you submitted the comments, we should really check that because it doesn't look right. It was pretty recent. And I think it was a while ago, right?
It sure was. It might have been 2020.
Yeah, I got it off the name of a file that I had that I kept for myself, and I think it's wrong now that I'm looking.
Yeah, I can check that while you're going through it.
Okay, so we all worked together, and you guys came up with a really great letter to send in comments, and then we didn't hear anything from them for quite a long time. And I thought maybe because the water was receding, they had dropped the project. And that's why we hadn't heard from them. But what happened was, and Jerry, I may not have all the facts together in this one, but Jerry is on some kind of email list and was informed that there was some kind of, I wouldn't call it a permit process, but it's called a certification process that the IEPA was working on. And so that seemed really weird that was happening. So Jerry and I decided that we were going to try and dig into this a little and figure out what was going on. So she wrote to Holloway, I think is his name, Jerry, the guy who worked in the water department. And he wrote back and said that, don't worry about it. The 4 cities engaged a contractor, GEI consultants, and they were engaged to review the dredging project. They put forward in the report that the data that was being examined was too old and that new data had to be developed. But the problem was in the spring of 2021, the Corps had to dredge, I assume, the approach channel in the advanced maintenance area and deposited the sediments in the lake, which is what they had been doing previously whenever they had a dredge. They just dumped it back in the lake someplace else. So what the consultant recommended was that no more sampling could take place until the sediments reaccumulated. And the impression we were getting from the city that this was kind of dead in the water, at least for now. But it didn't make any sense. So I called up the IEPA to find out from their perspective, because I knew that this request for certification was still going on. So I called them up to ask them based on their understanding what was going on, and had 2 phone calls, I think, and some email exchange with them. And Jerry had some email exchange as well. And so what this guy, Darren Gove, I don't know how you pronounce his name, what he told me that they're going ahead with their evaluation to decide whether or not they're going to allow this certification, and that they're going to be basing it on the review was only of the old data. And what was most disturbing to me was that they were only basing it on water criteria. So to me, that was really problematic. So Jerry and I discussed it. We thought it might be a good idea for the board to send another letter just to let the IEPA know that from your perspective and from mine, this is not a dead issue, and that we are going to be keeping a close eye on this. Because I've worked for US EPA, I had a pretty frank discussion with this guy and told him that, we were not trying to, we wanted to be very transparent in what we were recommending and what we wanted, that we didn't want to slam them at the end. Sometimes what happens with these permit reviews, and I'm going to use those words anyhow, the same thing as the certification review. What happens is people work really hard on it. And then by the time it goes to public comment, they start digging in their heels because they don't want to change anything, because they just want to ram these projects through. So what we were talking about is I just wanted to let them know that I thought it would be a good idea that if we sent a letter just telling them what our most current concerns are. So that's what this letter is. So the first part of it is really nothing new at all. It's just a reiteration of what was in the original letter that was sent out. And then I added a few comments on how to do the risk assessment because of this problem that they weren't looking at human health at all. They were just looking at aquatic risk assessment. So, and then it was really interesting. I told him that personally, my biggest concern is ingestion, that you have these little kids, I bring my granddaughter there. You have these little kids playing on the beach, and some kids, not only do they get sand in their mouth, but some kids have this condition called pica. About 10% of the population has it. And what pica is defined as is you're eating things that are of no nutritional value. So the question is, if the sand is contaminated, and we don't know if it is or not, but if it was, what would be driving the risk assessment, at least in my opinion, is this pica thing. So that's what number 1 says. The second one was, again, to reiterate this need to have more current data that's evaluated. And the third one was to hold a public meeting. So that's what this letter is about. And I didn't do a very good job describing it, but so maybe if you want to ask questions, that would be the best.
I'll just add, I did find out the original letter was sent in 2020. So we caught up with this almost exactly a year later. And this is really, just want to emphasize, this is not raising this for the first time, but this is, just reiterating that we are paying attention and that we do think that, human health criteria, this is not just a typical, water quality sample using their traditional, already available materials and running it, based on samples that were, many, many years old. But we believe that the residents of Evanston deserve a little bit better confidence that this material is safe.
Yeah, and then I should add a little, I'm going to add some information that really should be kept confidential because if we start talking about it a lot, we won't get any information out of the IEPA. But what Darren told me was the IEPA wasn't keen on approving it, but that the Corps said there was some kind of federal law that they had to approve it, which in my opinion is garbage. But anyhow, apparently the IEPA is under a lot of pressure to approve it. So
I'm just a little confused. Is it the dredging itself that is of concern, or is it the deposition of the dredged materials, or both? Because it's not.
We don't know how contaminated that sand is, but let's say if it was contaminated, which we don't know, but if it was, and it's deposited on beach shoreline, then you have a problem with people being exposed to PCBs, and PCBs are really toxic.
Right. So we're concerned about both the dredging, which would release the toxins into the water, and the potential deposition.
Not so much the dredging itself, because Lake Michigan's a big lake, and dilution is the solution of pollution, unfortunately. I mean, there's all sorts of problems always with dredging sediments and where to put them because they're so bulky and it's very expensive to dewater sediments. So that's the way it's done. It's just dumped back into some other part of the lake. So the reason this dredging is happening is that it's a working harbor, and so the navigation channel has to be dredged periodically, otherwise boats can't come through.
I just have one other quick question. I'm sorry. Do we know for a fact that they're planning on depositing the dredge materials on beaches, or are they just going to do what you said?
Well, I thought that was the whole point of it. Yeah, that they were looking to fortify the beaches in Evanston, and they were going to get it from this place. And that's why we were interested in it in the first place.
And to be clear, and Marty, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I would say in answer to Michelle's questions, this letter does not oppose the dredging. It doesn't even oppose the deposition on our beaches. It's simply asking that due diligence be done to show that this material is safe before it's deposited. So
based on the material itself and not on the water above the material.
I think that's like a really good, clear point to just add to the letter. It's really important, Jerry. What you're saying is we know the dredging needs to occur. We know the coastal protection needs to occur. We just want to make sure that it's done in a manner that's safe.
Marty, do you think you could help, add something to the letter that makes that point? And then we can,
But how's it gonna get approved? I mean,
well,
if I could get it, if somebody can open it, I tried to open it up in Google Docs and I couldn't do it.
Oh, Chris is so good at this.
Chris, we gotta give you,
Yeah, Michelle, if you want to add a sentence, why don't you add it?
yeah, if we want to get this approved this month, we could, I think we had some language in the original letter that said something similar, that, we understand and support the need for beach augmentation, or whatever they are calling it. What's the term? Beach
nourishment.
nourishment. Thank you. Thank you. Very good. Very good.
Who did that? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I think this is Chris, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chris.
great.
We don't necessarily oppose the dredging itself, or the deposit of or the use of this material for beach nourishment.
For beach nourishment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Not the water above it.
Well, that's a little tricky. So I don't think I want to get to that level.
I think you can say, but the sediments need to be tested.
Yeah, the sediments, the manner of testing, the traditional way is only just to test the water above it. They have a technique, I forget the name of it, but it's a procedure where they make a column with water and they test the water.
Maybe the sediment itself.
And
I don't know, Jerry. I think they're taking core samples.
sure, I know they're taking core samples, but what they actually analyze in the lab are not the quartz particles in the sand. They're using the water, whatever made it into the water. And I think what we're looking for is more recent samples, and one that takes into account different routes of exposure, like ingestion, like skin contact, or even inhalation.
Which is already in there.
So it's in there, but I'd rather not go into any more technical detail, because I think they know what we mean, and they're going to have to figure out what that translates to in terms of the lab tests.
Yep, I think it looks perfect, Chris.
Yes.
Awesome.
Any other comments? Marty, how does that look to you?
Fine.
And we had offered at the first letter that we sent out a year ago, or over a year ago, we had said, if there is a, public, group that would, continue to advise, look at the results, or stay tuned, that the Environment Board would like to, participate on such a, committee. And so this has taken it past that, just says, hold a public meeting. I think this is fine.
As long as we've got into Google Docs, if you could go up to that first sentence.
Yeah, please put a carriage return between the name and the address.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then where it says August 14th, 2021, I would just say in August 2020.
2020, yeah. Yeah.
It's also the Environment Board, but when either Sheree or I actually sends this out, we can double check too,
Okay.
as long as Chris can get us.
So if this is agreeable, there was also some strategies that Jerry and I were talking about in terms of the federal government, making sure the federal government stays involved in this. And so we were thinking that after you send this out, one thing you might want to consider, and it doesn't have to be this month, you can talk about it next month, or you could agree to it this month, is to just send an email to the political people, to BIS, Robin Gable, and Fine, and Jan Schakowsky, because of EPA and the board. And then also send, I would say now that Deborah Shore is going to become the regional administrator for Region 5, send it to Deborah Shore so everybody knows that you've taken this position, and that they won't be surprised later if there's some kind of tussle about this. At least they've all been informed that this is a concern of yours.
So there was a big, long CC list down there at the
Yeah,
bottom.
scroll down to that, Chris. Yeah, so they're there.
Except for not the regional administrator of US EPA.
Ah,
And Kelly Gandersky is, no longer,
yeah, acting.
I took those off the old, the first letter, so that could be all messed up.
So is Kelly's title now acting city manager?
I think it's interim.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's a correct.
That's
yeah.
correct. Okay.
Just
All right.
a question about timing, because we have been putting Carp and Carp implementation and these budget items at the top of our, what our objectives are. And we're just about to send yet another memo to some of these same people. I wonder if it would be better to just hold off a little bit before sending this to. It doesn't feel right to me to be writing to Daniel Biss and Kelly Gandersky, about, this major objective of ours, and then at the same time writing about this. That would be my preference.
So
That's
what
all right.
what really matters here, Wendy, is timing on the permit decision. So if this is on a roll for a decision based on, what they've indicated, then timing is very critical. And I actually don't know, Marty, do you know what the timing is of is there going to be a public meeting?
He would not tell me. I was really annoyed with him. He would not tell me what the timing is. He says, we don't tell you that until we tell you that it's available to public comment.
So I do agree that
I did not like.
The optics of, drawing people to this attention, unless there is an imminent, decision. If there is an imminent decision, this has to go. But I think we could if we could approve it tonight, and then Marty and I can find out more information about the process and decide if we can afford to wait a couple of weeks. I'm all for that.
How's this for a compromise? Why not? I would send it to the IEPA and US EPA now, so that you're on the public record that this is what you want. And then you can decide at your next meeting how you want to deal with the politicians. And the other thing, I'll probably write my own letter and copy all these guys.
So I'd like to raise something that's uncomfortable, but that I feel like we need to discuss. This is not the way that issues are usually signed off on by the board. It's very unusual for even someone on the board to bring a pre-written letter to us and ask us to sign off on it. And I know we did it in the first round last year. And I am certainly personally in agreement with all of this, and I don't mind having this come from the board, but how do others feel about the process of this? I mean, the other concern that I have is I have no personal expertise in these areas whatsoever. So, and we haven't really had a presentation or anything official on this project. So I feel like we're using the environment board to sign off on something that we don't know that much about. But how do others feel?
I think this was
Mark, you're on mute.
Sorry. I think this was the first meeting that I was at when we talked about this. And I thought that there was a pretty good discussion, a pretty good presentation of why this was of concern back then. I mean, I was just learning of how things work. So, it didn't seem odd to me at the time, but.
Okay.
I hear what you're saying, Cherie, right? We don't want to be the
We don't want to be a rubber stamp, certainly.
puppet, right? Or the rubber stamp. That being said, I don't think I made it to the August meeting, so it might be nice for me to go back and look at that presentation. If Mark, you said there was a presentation. I just hearing what Jerry is having to say and what Marty is bringing up, I have enough expertise in the area that I feel comfortable that this is something appropriate for the Environment Board to bring up, especially if nobody else in the city is looking at it or caring about it or concerned with it or even involved in the decision-making process. It seems like someone from the city should be involved.
Mhm.
And
A question. Wouldn't the public health board or the people in public health be interested in this issue too? Why wouldn't they be a person signing on to this too?
Might not be a bad idea to run it by them.
Do we have a public health board?
Well, Health and Human Services, you mean?
Yeah, do we have a Health and Human Services public board?
There's a committee. I don't know if there's a board.
But there's a whole division of public health in Evanston.
Yeah, and
Right.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that we'll want to make sure that we copy them as well. This has been a public works issue. The beach, so-called nourishment has been a very mechanical, addition to beach sand. I mean, very structural solution, not a chemical one, not a human health one. We're bringing up that this is an environmental issue. And the fact that we're able, that Marty has the expertise and I have a little bit of background in water as well, that we can point out the environment. This is absolutely an Environment Board issue. That's not really a question. I do understand the process that, bringing you a baked cake of a letter and saying, please sign it is not the way we do business, or perhaps should be the way we do business. But the timing here kind of caught us by surprise. I got a notification that they were issuing a permit because I'm on the environmental justice notification list. They send me everything that comes in an environmental justice area. If it's a proposed permit or a proposed action by Illinois EPA, not U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, not the federal government, but Illinois EPA, I get a notification. And that's how this came through, because Illinois was doing it in in Evanston, and the entire city of Evanston, according to the state of Illinois, is an environmental justice area. So that's the only reason that I got it. But it's intriguing, the process that they have to go through for a dredge permit is they have to get a 401 certification. It's called the Water Quality Act Section 401 certification. It just says, they're testing using their water quality criteria, and it's okay. And it's a little bit of a rubber stamp in a lot of cases. So in this particular case, because it's Evanston, we felt that, I certainly felt that this was worthy of the board's attention, and that it could be perfectly fine. I hope that this material is completely safe and that they dredge the heck out of it and dump it all over as many beaches as could use additional sand. I think that would be the best possible outcome. But I wouldn't want that to happen. I don't think any of us would want that to happen without knowing, because this is a former Superfund site.
Yeah, there were Superfund sites all up and down the coast here.
It's some really nasty stuff was in the area, and we've got rising lake levels and storm events that are moving stuff around in an unpredictable way.
I don't think, Gary, I don't think we disagree with what we're trying to do, right? I think we're in agreement on that. It's like maybe a bit the how. And to your point, if it's something that Public Works is involved in, I'm just also sort of thinking aloud, sorry, that, you know, if we send this letter and we CC Dave Stonebeck, we probably don't want to surprise him with it, right? You probably want to have that conversation with him as well. So maybe it's more appropriate if this is timely for, you know, you and Marty to write the letter and for us to kind of keep it and follow up on it as an environment board, just so that we're comfortable that we're not kind of being, and I don't feel like we are being railroaded, but the process that Cherie brought up is probably a good idea for us to maybe dot a couple more I's and cross a couple more T's before we send this off.
If I can jump in too a little bit. First of all, I think it's Parks and Rec that and that's responsible for the beaches. And I think you did have some correspondence with Lawrence Hemingway about this, didn't you, Jerry?
Yeah, I misspoke. And Lawrence, and he was
parallel to
us.
public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I because my name would be, I just you know, I appreciate Cherie's having raised that somewhat uncomfortable point, and I can see it from different angles. I guess because my name would be on it too. I guess I kind of thought, what if somebody asked me a question about this letter? You know, I'm not sure I could answer in the same level of detail, you know, that is in the letter. It endorsing, following up, you know, a simpler letter, I would feel frankly more comfortable about. On the other hand, I'm also willing to, you know, to send it, but I do think it's partly because it's so technical sounding that it feels a little different to me from the kind of thing we usually agree on as a group, and that Cherie and I could sign on our collective behalf, but maybe.
So let me propose an alternative here, and that is we keep the letter as it is. You know, Marty and I can send individual letters, which will, you know, quite frankly, have less of an impact than if it comes from the board. But what if we invited the health department head, Ike Agbo, and Lawrence Hemingway from Parks and Rec, and invited them to speak to the Environment Board about our concerns about this process. And as we learn more about what's happening and what, you know, we believe, at least some of us believe that there should be some human health criteria considered, and let them take the ball. I mean, obviously it's the city that should speak out on behalf, you know, to Illinois EPA, to the Corps of Engineers about this issue. And if we can discuss this with them, share our concerns, what about that? What about just inviting them to the November meeting and having this on the agenda?
I'm completely down with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also down with signing off on the letter if the Environment Board asks me and Wendy to do that, if there's consensus.
I don't mind sending it to the EPA or the upper level that was proposed too, like what was it, the U.S. Corps of Engineers or something like that. What, Marty, what was it? You said the first tier?
Well, I would send it to the IEPA and the US EPA right now.
Okay.
Just to get on the record. If I could add something, and I hope you guys don't take it this wrong way. You know, I was on the board 20 years ago for 8 years, and you guys are dealing with way more important issues than we were able to do back then because times have really changed. In my mind, if you don't take, at some point, don't take a position on this one way or the other, whatever you think is the right way to go, why do you exist in the first place? There's not that many real environmental pollution issues that come up in Evanston. It's more, you know, a thing about nature and native landscaping. And I don't mean to denigrate anything that you're doing under the climate program, but this is a real environmental problem that is pretty rare in Evanston. It doesn't happen very often. And so I think you should see this as part of your mission.
So I agree with you on that, Marty. Maybe it's the language of the letter. Maybe if the letter sounded more like the paragraph that Chris wrote, that's less technical and more, it has come to our attention that this issue exists, that this permit is, you know, under consideration, and we have these concerns based on, you know, potential contaminants in the dredged materials. That's more like where I feel like I am. And Melanie just put in the chat, just for the, hi Melanie, just for the record, the waste transfer station and air quality is also an issue in Evanston.
I knew I was going to send something when I made that statement. That's not my intent. Just as an aside, it's really interesting and gratifying to see the issues that are now coming to you that, you know, we just had a problem even trying to change the code to make it more climate friendly on the electrical code, and we could never do it. The administration of the city was just so backwards, we could get nowhere with it for a long time. So kudos to you guys.
To move this along, and thanks, Melanie, for correcting the record, I think very much so. What if we just went with that more generalized paragraph number 1, and allowed that to be our, you know, conversation starter, along with, and then maybe, you know, go down. Is there a number 4, Chris? Could you scroll down, please? You know, hold a public meeting once the draft determination is made. I think that's a given. They're going to do that. And the more technical details, we can save that for our, you know, the letters that will be coming in from other people, including me and Marty. It can be part of our conversation with Lawrence Hemingway and Ike Agbo, but the board shouldn't sign anything that they're not comfortable with. And I think making that primary point, that the dredged material is safe for human exposure including children.
Yeah,
And
I think like including like half of paragraph number 2 works. Maybe just not when we get into all the details about PICO children and growth and stuff like that. Like maybe we just stop the second paragraph after, you know, the 0 to 12 years old piece.
yeah,
Just delete that bit.
that's adding technical details that, you know, perhaps, you know, Wendy and Cherie might not be able to answer questions about, quite honestly, and that's fair.
I also just have a question, and question number 3, is that saying that the only criteria that will be used to determine if the sediment is safe is PCBs and asbestos? Do they not look at any heavy metals?
No, it should be more complete. What we're saying there is that it be based on current.
Which we already have in number 1. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there's a heavy metals problem with that sediment.
But if we don't know, maybe we could just say current contaminant data taken in the 2020s.
Yeah, current contaminant data. I think that's fine.
I think I'm fine with all of this. I think the paragraph that starts above, nonetheless, the IEPA is continuing to review. I think all that paragraph belongs in the letter that comes from Marty.
Yeah.
Let's see what we're left with.
What about the little bit at the end of that sentence where it's our understanding IEPA is going to base its review on old data? Is that worth keeping? Or not, because we don't know that as
Well, yeah, I think what I'm hearing the board say is that you don't have direct access to that information. That is fact that we have learned in our, you know, communication, and that we would like to discuss further with city city leadership, but, coming from the board makes it sound like, you've had a direct line to that, and that wouldn't be true.
All right, so we delete that paragraph.
Right.
Right. And the paragraph above it, quite honestly, says that since then we've learned that, they're doing a 401 certification. I mean, have we? Some of us have. I have, but
I mean, Jerry, you could send the email that said that, let us know that. I mean, just share those emails and then people.
well, Marty, what I'm trying to do is get agreement tonight on, putting our, flag on the hill or whatever you want to call it, foot in the sand, that, we're watching this. We didn't forget that we sent a letter last year, and, quite frankly, it doesn't look like they paid a lot of attention to it. So what's up, guys? I think that's the whole purpose, is to let them know we're still interested in paying attention. So I'm fine with taking out a lot of these details as long as we can make that point.
Yeah.
Oh, that last line, do we have comments to attach to this?
Just our previous comments from last year.
Oh, okay.
That's what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Chris, I think we were talking about taking out the whole paragraph that starts since then. How do others feel about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I see.
So maybe we need to add a sentence that says, it has come to our attention that there is currently a permit under review by Illinois EPA to move forward with this project without addressing the comments that we previously submitted, right?
Right.
I think that's the transition sentence we need. And then
Well, just a second. So what the Corps of Engineers did is they responded to some comments and hid them in all those websites and never told anybody they were doing that. And they were very vague response to comments.
Right. That I like the way that's worded, because they embedded our comments into kind of a broader, making sure the material is, if you look at it, they will say they did a responsiveness summary and they lumped our comments, basically ignoring all of the details.
Right.
So, yeah, in a satisfactory manner. I like that.
Unsatisfactory and evasive matter?
I think we should keep the evasive.
I'm not willing to go that far.
I'm thinking we should underline or bold or something the sentence that says, first and foremost, we want to ensure that the dredged material being deposited. So if somebody just glances this over, that's the message that we're sending.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep.
All right. How does everyone feel with where we've landed with this?
Yep. I think we're just not
Better.
paying close enough.
Say that again. We're close enough.
Yeah, I said, I think we're not paying Chris enough.
You're paying me
Yes.
exactly what I'm worth.
Not at all. We got to give you a special title.
Yeah. In all seriousness, Shuri, I do very much appreciate you raising the process point. I think that's a really important point to consider. I think everyone raised some really valid thoughts, and I'm glad that we were able to align on something that we feel good about. Just wanted to say thanks for raising the point, because it's also a point of concern for me.
Yeah, and I also want to thank Marty for raising the point that this is really what the board is here for, to hear from the citizens of the community and elevate their concerns.
Even though I managed to offend people, so I'm really sorry about that.
Not at all.
No, not at all.
I think the world's a better place when we're all honest with one another.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we ready for a motion? All right. Could I have a motion to submit this letter as seriously edited to all the people in the 2 and CC list.
With one, before we do that, we need to add Deborah Shore, Regional Administrator, EPA Region 5.
Okay.
And I think
We
we also
also,
have
we also
the-
talked about sending some to our local city government people.
Yeah,
We decide to do
Ike
that?
Well, we've got Lawrence Hemingway, Dave Stoneback, Daniel Biss. Who were you thinking about?
Iqbal, help.
Oh, Ike, right. Yeah,
I think Deborah Shore's name, I'll look up the spelling.
It's SHORE.
and I think it's DEBRA. Yeah.
And then I actually know her email addresses. I'm sure Jerry does too. It's shore.deborah@epa.gov.
BORA.
There's an E after the shore.
Okay, it's sure. Yeah, like the water, like the beach. And Ike obviously is not his actual name.
EPA.gov. EPA, not VA.
EPA.gov.
Yeah, there you go. Great. And if you don't mind, before you send it, look up Ike's address, but it's City of Evanston, Agbo, yeah.
And then Deborah Shore should go Deborah Shore, comma, Regional Administrator, Region 5.
USCPA Region 5.
Yeah. Great.
All right.
Thank you, guys. I also want to thank Cherie for I am so appreciative of this group. I think we really trust each other, and I'm glad that we got to this place.
Me too.
And shorter letters are good anyhow. It's more likely people are going to read them if they're shorter.
Yes.
One nice page. That's good.
Yep. Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
Oh, can I just add?
Yes.
Ike's email address. I'm sorry. Ike's email address is IKE.
We don't need to include that.
Yeah, we'll fill that in.
Okay.
We're gonna have to look all that up.
All right. Motion.
Okay.
So-
A motion to submit the letter to the 2 and CC list as edited by the board this evening.
I would second it.
Oh, I need a first. Sorry. Okay. Can we have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. Carolyn, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Wow.
All right.
Thanks
Nicely
very
done,
much.
everyone.
you
Yes,
so
thanks
much.
for working through that process, everyone.
Beautiful.
Beautiful indeed.
Let's see what happens. Thanks. I'm going to leave the meeting, guys. But thanks
Okay.
very much. It was all very interesting to listen to it. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Marty.
Bye, Marty. Okay, last thing on the agenda is Lovelace Park landscaping opportunity. Wendy.
This should be extremely quick. And before we do you want me to send this one, Cherie, or you send the other?
Yes, please can you
Okay.
send this one? If you
Yes.
need help looking things up or anything, let me know.
Okay, thank you. This is just very, very quick, but for the record, there's a group around Lovelace Park, that, as Marty was just saying, we do spend a lot of time talking about green spaces in this group. And this is one of them that they've been wanting to basically turn part of Lovelace Park into a meadow, and just wanted the board to know that at the urging of one of the neighbors, whom some of us know, Sigrid Pilgrim, she's informed me about a construction project that's been going on there. Some of you may have seen that. Turned out the city got a $200,000 grant to redo a paved path through Lovelace Park, and tore up a lot of the area that they had the neighbors had hoped to turn into a meadow and put a drain in and so on. So that's underway, but in order to inform myself better, I was in contact with Bridget Nash and the supervising engineer for the project, Chris Natta. And there was an exchange with Sigrid Pilgrim that involves the mayor and her alderman council member, Suffredin, about this project and her concern about hoping that the engineers and the people who are trying to encourage and support more naturalized landscape management would communicate better. So I simply took the opportunity to write back to this exchange that she was having, saying that we were very glad to see that the budget, the 2022 budget, also includes a proposal from staff to fund a consultant to develop a plan for green space management in the city. This flowed out of our natural areas ordinance and discussion. So that sounds a little complicated, but I wanted you all to know that was going on, because it does touch on some of this advocacy we've been doing for expanded natural areas. So that it's also worth noting that item is in the draft budget, and definitely something I think we would all support. So if you hear anything about Lovelace Park and the meadow, that's what's going on.
That it just brings to mind, Wendy, thank you for sharing, but it brings to mind one of the early discussions that the Carp implementation team had with the mayor. And it's really about integrating Carp, like a Carp review in kind of every project, right? Every project has to go through some kind of a review process in the city. And, I remember that Mayor Biss said, well, we should be doing that. And maybe that's something that we can look at, not letting drop off of our radar screen.
Yeah, I actually wondered, because of this exchange, whether we might want to invite Laura Biggs and or Bridget Nash to come to the meeting, at one of our meetings, and have this discussion about how could this work better. So, because I do think I don't understand as much about that department as I do about some of the other divisions of the city, and it might be interesting to talk with them.
I think this, I want to add that this also falls in a category of recurring lack of transparency that the board has come up against with various city projects, both. So I think one issue that came up with like the Crown Center rebuilding is that the money came from outside the city budget. And so there was very little, it seemed to be very little incentive for the city to bring the plans before the community and get public feedback. It was done, but it was not done in a very open way, and it was not done in an iterative process way. And this has come up again as well in the Main Street renovation corridor, which is done with city funding, but seems to bypass a lot of the I don't know, the presentation to the public in this board.
And it's not only on environmental topics, right? It's on it.
Yeah.
It's in all areas where the community, we could make improvements in that kind of stakeholder input, outreach prior to and during development of projects.
I think just, as part, just to build on that, when I looked into it, I saw that the council has to sign off on grant proposals, I suppose, of a certain size. In any case, this went to council, and the memo, this transmittal memo, the staff sent to council said there had been no public meetings about it. So, I can only assume there was an opportunity that came up. It looked like a lot of money, and someone said, let's fix the path, the flooded paths in Lovelace Park, and that was it. So anyway, it does seem worth discussing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think on the sort of longer game, that's something of importance to the board.
Mhm.
Okay, I think that concludes our official business for the evening. I just wanted to add, it's not on the agenda, but I ran into Asia Gilbert, who was a fellow with the Office of Sustainability last year
Mhm.
at a meeting that I went to at the Morton Arboretum. And she is now working for the Nature Conservancy on a project in Amani Village in South Chicago.
Yeah.
So she is employed, she's doing well. It was great to run into her. And she asked
Good.
me to say hello to everyone for her.
Good.
All right, can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Jerry. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, thank you again tonight for your great discussion, everyone, and we'll see you next
Yeah.
month.
And thank you, Kara, for hanging in
night.
here with us for this long.
I know.
This was your introduction to the Environment Board's process. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks
take
all.
care, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.